They picked on the quiet kid. Big mistake. What would you do if no one ever noticed you, unless it was to laugh? Lucas never spoke much. He wasn't the kind of boy who drew attention. No flashy clothes, no loud voice. He sat in the back of the classroom, always with a book in his lap, head down, trying to disappear into the silence he had mastered so well. And for a long time, it worked. Teachers barely called on him. Classmates ignored him. To them, Lucas was just there, a filler in the background of their lives. But all of that changed one afternoon in the school cafeteria. It started small, a spilled juice box, someone accidentally bumping into him and knocking his tray to the floor. Laughter. Not a roar, but enough to echo in his chest. He bent down to clean it up. No words, no anger, just quiet, as always. But someone caught that silence and mistook it for weakness. That someone was Travis. Travis was the golden boy, star of the football team. Loud, cocky, always surrounded by a crowd that laughed before he even finished his jokes. He noticed Lucas for the first time that day, not because he cared, but because bullies like Travis always need a target. And Lucas didn't fight back. That made him perfect. The cafeteria prank became a daily routine. Trip him in the hallway, mock his clothes, call him names under their breath, just loud enough so the others could hear and join in. And Lucas, he never said a word, but what no one knew was that behind those silent eyes, something was starting to change, because one day Lucas would stop being quiet, and when he did, the whole school would wish they had never laughed at him. Lucas woke up each morning with a pit in his stomach. The walk to school felt like a march toward a battlefield, and yet, every day, he put on the same quiet smile. It was a mask he wore well. At home, his mother thought he was just shy. The teachers thought he was just one of those quiet kids. No one asked questions. And Lucas, he never offered answers. He'd sit through class trying to become invisible, but the bullies made sure he was seen, for all the wrong reasons. Travis and his crew started calling him Ghost Boy. They said he had no voice, no spine, no purpose. Every insult chipped away at something deeper than confidence. It ate at his very sense of worth. He began avoiding the cafeteria, spent his lunches in the library, hiding between bookshelves like they were walls. But even there, the whispers followed. He's a freak. Probably talks to himself. Bet he cries when he gets home. They weren't wrong, at least about the last part. Every night Lucas would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why it hurt so much to just exist. His heart felt too big for his chest, stuffed with pain he couldn't let out. And yet, not once did he tell anyone, not a counselor, not a teacher. Not even his mom, because somewhere deep inside, he believed that if he just stayed quiet long enough, the world would forget he was there. But silence, as he would soon discover, is a dangerous thing, especially when it begins to boil. And Lucas was starting to simmer, because soon something or someone would push him too far. And the quiet boy they thought they knew would never be the same again. It didn't stop with whispers and trips in the hallway. One morning, Lucas arrived at school to find his locker wide open, its contents dumped on the floor. His notebooks were ripped apart, pages soaked with juice. Someone had written across them in permanent marker, "Mute loser." Students walked past, some stepping over his things, others laughing like it was just another episode in a daily sitcom. And Lucas, he knelt, gathering the wet paper with shaking hands, his eyes stinging, not just from the mess, but from the 100 eyes that saw him and did nothing. Later that same day, during gym class, Travis orchestrated something crueler. It was supposed to be just dodgeball, but when Lucas was up, Travis beamed a ball straight into his stomach with enough force to knock the air out of him. As Lucas gasped on the floor, trying to breathe, the coach barely looked up. "Come on, kid, shake it off." The laughter roared, but The final blow came the following week, on the day of the school talent show. Lucas hadn't signed up, of course not, but Travis did it for him. "Special surprise act," the host said, chuckling as Lucas's name was called to the stage. Frozen, stunned, someone from the crowd shoved him gently forward. Lucas walked onto the stage under the bright lights, heart hammering, hands ice cold. The curtain opened. A piano stood waiting, placed there not for him, but for their humiliation. Behind him, the screen lit up with a photo someone had taken of him eating alone in the library. On it, the words, "quiet, sad, and useless." The audience burst into cruel laughter. Lucas didn't cry, not this time. He just stood there, still silent, his face unreadable. He walked off stage without saying a word. And for the first time, no one laughed as he passed by, because in that silence, something had changed. And what nobody saw coming was that Lucas had already started planning his revenge. The Monday after the talent show, Lucas didn't go to school. He stayed home, staring out his window, replaying the moment on stage over and over. Not the laughter, not the shame. No, what haunted him most was his own silence. He hadn't said a single word, not to defend himself, not to fight back, nothing. And for the first time, he was tired of being silent. That night, he pulled an old cardboard box from under his bed. Inside were photos of him and his dad, a man he barely remembered who had passed when Lucas was just 6. But what he did remember was his father's voice, deep and calm, telling him, "You don't need to shout to be strong, but when it's time, let them hear you." Lucas ran his fingers over a photo of his dad in a martial arts uniform. Black belt, local champion, a man who had stood tall but never needed to raise his voice. Lucas closed the box. He knew what he had to do. The next afternoon, instead of going straight home, he walked into a small, dusty gym just 2 blocks from school. A place nobody his age even knew existed. The bell above the door rang, and an old man behind the counter looked up. Sharp eyes, scarred knuckles. "You here to watch or to learn?" he asked. Lucas didn't hesitate. To learn. From that day forward, Lucas became someone else after school. He trained quietly but intensely. Boxing, footwork, breathing, control. Every punch thrown was a memory of shame. Every push-up a whispered insult burned into his skin. The old man, Coach Ramirez, never asked questions. He saw the pain in Lucas's eyes and gave him exactly what he needed: discipline, focus, and strength. And as Lucas's body grew stronger, so did his voice, not in sound but in presence. At school, he stayed the same on the surface, quiet, reserved, unnoticed. But something in his walk had changed. His shoulders straighter, his eyes sharper. People still laughed, but it didn't cut as deep, because Lucas had a secret now, and he was almost ready to show them all what a mistake they'd made. And when that moment came, it would shake the whole school to its core. It was a Friday afternoon. The air at school was thick with the usual noise, shouts, laughter, lockers slamming. But for Lucas, everything was silent, focused. He had waited for this day, trained for it, lived it in his mind 100 times. Travis didn't know it yet, but today he'd picked on the wrong kid for the last time. It started like any other prank. Travis and his crew cornered Lucas near the back of the school just before the final bell. They were already laughing before they even touched him. "Hey, ghost boy," Travis grinned, slapping a fake "kick me" sign onto Lucas's back. "Heard? You've been hiding again, what you cried to your mommy." Lucas didn't flinch, he didn't run. He turned, and for the first time, he looked Travis directly in the eyes. "You want to hit me?" Lucas said, his voice calm, controlled, steady. "Go ahead." That stunned them. Even the others fell quiet. "What did you say?" Travis blinked. Lucas stepped forward. "I said go ahead." Travis didn't hesitate. He shoved Lucas hard. But this time Lucas didn't fall. In one fluid motion, Lucas sidestepped, used Travis's momentum, and sent him crashing into the lockers with a thud that echoed down the hall. Gasps. Silence. Travis jumped up, furious, charging, but Lucas was ready, calm, focused. He didn't swing wildly, he didn't attack. He just moved with precision, blocking, dodging, redirecting every blow. It wasn't a fight, it was a lesson in restraint, in control, in power without violence. And then Lucas did something no one expected. He stopped. He stood still, hands lowered, and looked at Travis, bloodied lip, heaving chest, eyes burning with humiliation. "This isn't about hurting you," Lucas said, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. "This is about showing you I'm not afraid of you anymore." That was the moment everything changed. Because strength wasn't in the punches. It was in the silence that followed. When Travis didn't know what to say, when the crowd around them, once full of laughter, looked at Lucas with something new in their eyes. Respect. Even the teachers arrived too late to stop it. But they saw enough. And for the first time, they saw Lucas, not as the quiet kid, but as the boy who stood tall. But the real impact of that day would come after the dust settled, when the whispers turned to questions and the school would never be the same again. After that day, something shifted. Not just in Lucas, but in the entire school. Whispers turned into silence when he walked by. Not out of fear, but out of a strange, quiet reverence. People started to look at him differently, not as a victim, not as a shadow, but as someone who had faced fire and walked through it with dignity. Travis? He never tried anything again. His pride had taken the real hit that day, and though he never apologized, the way he lowered his eyes when Lucas passed by was apology. Enough. The school administrators tried to pretend nothing happened. But kids talked. Teachers began to pay more attention. A few even pulled Lucas aside. "If anything's ever wrong, come to me," they'd say. Too late, maybe, but not meaningless. Lucas didn't become loud. He didn't start hanging out with the popular kids. That wasn't the point. He stayed quiet, but now it was a different kind of quiet. One filled with confidence, with strength, with peace. Coach Ramirez kept training him, not for revenge anymore, but for mastery. And sometimes younger kids from school would come into the gym, shy, eyes downcast. Lucas would be the one to greet them, calm, patient, a guide for those who still walk the path he once did. Years later, at graduation, Lucas stood on stage. Not as valedictorian, not as the most popular, but as someone who had earned every second of that moment. And when his name was called, the applause wasn't loud, but it was real, because they all remembered the boy who never spoke until it mattered most, and now they would never forget him, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks in silence and still shakes the world. So next time you see someone sitting alone, quiet, overlooked, remember Lucas and ask yourself what power might be hiding behind that silence. If this story touched you, leave a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated or seen someone rise above the pain? Share your voice, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more powerful stories like this one.